Most people think that cEDH deck building is just copying a deck list and shuffling up. But the truth is, the real edge comes from how top players make cuts, tune flex slots, and adapt to their meta. Today, I'm breaking down the exact questions competitive players use to refine their decks, covering card selection, testing, mulligans, and the hidden decisions that separate good lists from tournament-winning ones. If you're serious about leveling up your cEDH deck building, this is where it starts. And for today's deck building discussion, I am joined by Praetors of Spice member Lluminate. Hi, Lluminate.
How you doing? I go by Lluminate on Discord. My name is Jayden. I will respond to either one. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me out for this. This was a fun thing to dig into my own process and kind of get ready for it.
Because I know you inspired me to play dogthras. So I know that I was looking at the deck and I was like, here's maybe what I would want to do. And then you were talking about things you wanted to do. So I was like, let's see if we kind of, I don't know, land in the same spot on some things, or if we're looking at the same, details or information. So it was just something that stuck out to me that I really thought others could greatly benefit from.
Yeah, I love dogthras. It's honestly probably my favorite deck. I did have to take a break from it for a week because I don't know, I just had a mental block and I couldn't get into anything. Took a break and now I'm back on it. It's been fun. Like, I've been on dogthras for months now, as I'm sure you can attest to, and all of my friends can attest to. Like, it's a very fun deck.
Of course, just jumping kind of straight into it. So you are from Canada, and to my understanding, you guys have a pretty interesting local meta. So what do you feel is your overall philosophy when you're building or evaluating a cEDH deck?
My kind of philosophy, and speaking to the meta in my area, I don't like to tech for just my meta, because I do play a lot online. As you know, I play a lot with you and I play a lot with other people. So I don't enjoy teching for just the decks that I see around me.
Right.
So I kind of my philosophy is like looking at my list and asking myself, is this as efficient as it can be? So like putting in all the fast mana, making sure my mana curve is smooth and I can actually do things on time to progress my own board state. But another question I always ask myself while building is, can I still do what I personally want to be doing with the deck? Like, can I do my thing while still being efficient and having that kind of fun? So I like building in cards that you might not normally see in lists, just because like, hey, I think this is cool. If it's not good enough at a later date, I can take it out. At least I was able to try it.
I know when I'm evaluating a deck, and I know my overall philosophy, for a while I wasn't being as considerate of what am I going to encounter out in the wild, or what am I going to encounter when I go to a tournament, right? Because sometimes some deck decisions, like when I'm playing Dihada, I do not like playing Praetor's Grasp and Tainted Pact in Dihada.
Yeah.
But in tournaments, it makes sense because I'm far more likely to run into a deck that runs Thassa's Oracle. And then I could perform that win line, and Tainted Pact still has value outside of that. Or also in a tournament, having more information can be very helpful. But also, kind of to your point, when we're going online and we're playing people, it's a blind meta. You don't know what you're going to run into. So how do you tech against something that you don't know you're going to run into?
Right. Yeah.
So I definitely could feel that. And you mentioned something about curves, so that kind of leads me into the next topic a little bit here around philosophy and meta. And what do you feel is the driving force of your decisions? So I caught a little bit of consistency there, but I know with the likes of dogthras, like there's speed, resilience, flexibility of cards. So what do you feel you like to evaluate first?
Going on what you listed, like speed, consistency, resilience, and flexibility, I think my driving force is kind of a combination of three things. So speed for being able to develop my board in an efficient way and get a plan going. Consistency in the way of making sure I have multiple ways of getting to a plan, whether that be just getting to one specific plan or having multiple built in that still kind of synergize with each other. And then the resilience, just having the ability to back up what I'm doing or being able to shut out my opponents with like silence effects or back up what I'm doing with counter spells.
So that's part of what I liked about dogthras. It's part of why it resonated with me more so than rogthras does from a general gameplay perspective, is because it has white. You can cram almost all of the silence effects into it with little to ill effect. Of course, I say almost all of them because we don't have access to red in dogthras like you do in rogthras. But who really wants to play Spider-Punk these days?
I will forever be a Spider-Punk hater. And you know that about me. I hate that you brought that up. God damn it. But I will forever be a Spider-Punk hater because it's just, Hexing Squelcher, now that it's out, is strictly better. Like, only making your stuff uncounterable is so much better than having it be a world effect. Like, it's, I don't even get me started on Spider-Punk, man.
Now, I will say this. When I had Spider-Punk and Gwenum Remorseless in dihada, that makes a little bit more sense because Riot can give Gwenum haste. And that's a way to enable that. But I do agree. Anytime I saw Spider-Punk in dihada, I was like, this just feels bad. And then the moment I saw Hexing Squelcher, I was just like, well, I know what's getting traded out, so...
Yeah, like if you're using Spider-Punk for the Riot ability, that negative effect stapled to it is just, for me, it would feel too much. It would feel like too much of a downside to be able to use that Riot effect effectively. Like having somebody cast a Born Upon a Wind and not being able to stop it just seems so bad to me. I can't get behind that.
Now, in all fairness, in all of my testing, it never came up.
Fair.
So, and it ultimately is now cut from the deck.
Yeah.
But now we're going to try out something new with Opposition Agent and Mornsong Aria, so we're going to be even more of a menace.
Jesus, buddy. Not excited.
So that, of course, is kind of a beautiful segue into our next part, identifying cuts and testing cards. So how much do you feel that playing into that blind online meta affects your card choices?
That's a tough one. I do try and build for the wider meta of cedh, so I'm able to sit down in any pod and still have a chance. That feeling of like, okay, I can still compete. I can still win this game. Where like I try not to you won't find many like silver bullets per se, because like my meta locally has Rao, it has Magda, it has a blue farm, and like it has a Zada. Like there's one guy pushing Zada and it works. Like it's a good deck, but it is still fringe. So I don't try and tech for those decks. Like I don't tech for Magda, I don't tech for Zada. Like obviously having a blue farm in my meta is good and it's good reference point, but the other two decks are still unknown. So I try and keep away from the silver bullets, especially when I know like I'm gonna be playing online with this list more than I do locally, and especially for tournaments. It's just never good to have like forget about a silver bullet in your deck when you go to a tournament.
Now, I do want to make sure we're clear, because I know I heard you correctly, because I know we've talked about it before, but for the viewers watching at home, he did say Zada. He was not talking about Zerda the Dawnwaker. No, he really was talking about Zada, the mono red goblin that copies spells for all of your other creatures. You are hearing that correctly.
Mono red Zada, not Zerda. It's a wild deck. I played against it a few times, and the first time I was like, wait, you can do what? And you win the game here? What? It's wild. It's fun.
Bearing that in mind, what common mistakes do you see other players fall into?
I think if you're not playing online and you're not one to really want to go to tournaments, like it's very, and down the line you say, okay, I can play online and I can maybe go to a tournament, but being and getting comfortable in just your local meta will send you down a path of like, okay, this is what I'm gonna see in the wild. Whereas that's really not the case. Like if you have a pod of Zada and just some other fringe decks, like you're almost never going to see those out in the wider cEDH meta because a lot of people have that same mindset of like, okay, this is the best. I'm going to use this and I can win. Whereas your local meta could be more about fun and just playing the game, playing casual cEDH. So I think getting comfortable in your local meta and not experiencing the wider meta is a way to like build a deck that counters a specific deck in your meta, but that's not leading into the wider meta. You're not going to have a good time.
I was going to say, I've definitely seen people tech against specific decks and then not make any adjustments or reevaluations and then enter a tournament and wonder why they get blown out. And it's like, well, you tech for a particular deck. That's a fringe deck. You're not going to see it at a tournament.
And
if you do, if ever,
that's going to be your one like good matchup in the 5 rounds that you play or 7 rounds that you play. Like,
right.
It's not good to tech for those fringe decks, I think.
Right. So bearing that in mind, how often would you say you're evaluating cards for your deck? So in this example, we're talking dogthras.
Yeah. I'm an analytical person by nature, especially when it comes to Magic. So I'm like always analyzing cards as they come up in games. Even if I don't have a card off to the side that I want to slot into that deck. So I'll draw a card and be like, okay, does this help or really hinder in this situation? So like a prime example, especially in Dogthras, is drawing Emil. You never want to draw the Emil. Most of the time you want to tutor it out because having it in your hand, it can just sit in your hand for so long and just rot there, even if you have some of the other pieces to push for that win. It can still just sit in your hand and not do anything.
Right. There have been times where I've been playing Dogthras and I'm like, you know, because I'll show on stream, like I've got this hand and I'm gonna pitch it back, and people are like, "Oh, the hand's amazing," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it's got Emil in it. I don't want Emil in my opening hand. I don't want to see it until I'm ready to see it."
Yeah.
Right? And then like in Dihada, it's very similar. I don't always want to see Dark Ritual and Opposition Agent, or I don't want to see Dark Ritual and Necropotence in my opener. Unless I'm mulled down to like 5, then it's like, okay, well, that's going to be how I get back in the game, right? So, and we are going to definitely talk about mulligans in a little bit. Yeah. But another question, well, I say question, this is kind of just, it makes me think about this. I have had people tell me they feel like my cuts for my decks are just always, so it's just like you just cut it. And you're because they're like, you're ruthless. And I'm like, well, I'm watching the wider meta. I'm watching other decks that are performing in tournaments.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you were talking about. It's like, I'm constantly evaluating what's going to be good for the deck, what's not going to be good for the deck. And then we definitely, I think, are going to revisit this a little bit more when we talk about getting into tracking. That leads us right into, when making cuts, how do you arrive at what to cut? So you talked about being very analytical. Is there some process? Is there something that you are evaluating or looking at as you're playing? Like walk me through it a little bit.
My kind of process is allowing the cards to come up in games and seeing them in different situations and scenarios and like different board states in general. So if I do have a swap in mind, which I'm currently trying to find a slot for an Archdruid's Charm in Dogthras. So I have a few cards that I'm kind of considering swapping it in for. But I'm playing more games to see when those cards come up. And when those do come up, I will always ask myself the question, okay, would I rather have this card that I currently have, or would I rather it be an Archdruid's Charm? And if that question comes up with the answer of, okay, I would much rather have the Archer's Charm more often than not, I will make that cut, no matter what card it is. Because being the analytical person I am, I don't like getting too overly emotionally attached to cards. I like seeing the numbers and like seeing how they perform against the wider meta. So
yeah,
it's not an emotional thing. It's just numbers, and it's what'll help me win more games. So if a card needs to be cut, it comes out of the deck.
So I had a very similar approach where I was having trouble justifying keeping Spider-Punk and Gwynnm Remorseless in dihada.
Yeah.
And I was just like, when I see Gwynnm, it does the thing, and it does the thing great.
Yeah.
But when I see Spider-Punk, it's just like,
right.
Can I find another silence effect? Like, do I really have to do this? And then, like I said, I've never had the two of them together to be able to properly evaluate that style of situation. So there are times where I feel like, okay, having Bolas's Citadel on a stick and having that effect be redundant in the deck is very, very helpful. But then there's also been times where it's like, but I have to wait, or I'm telegraphing, or I could just as easily get blown out the wrong way because it is a creature, right? There's so much to consider. And so, again, right into the next item, what do you feel is the hardest card type to cut and why? Now, before you answer, let me elaborate a little bit. It could be card type specific, like instants or sorceries or lands, or it could be card type agnostic, thinking like a value engine or a tutor or a combo piece. So you can answer either way.
Okay. That's definitely a loaded question. Because I feel like it's dependent on whatever kind of list I'm building. So for right now, the decks I play, like being Dogthras and Dargo Silas, they're two different things. So for Dogthras, it's usually creatures or creature tutors. But for like Dargo Silas, I haven't played it too much, so I'm not 100% sure. But it's like probably the instants, and some of the sorceries are artifacts, just because it needs that speed, whereas Dogthras, it doesn't necessarily need that same speed because it's more of a mid-range focused build.
Right. Would you also say that Dogthras, the reason why you focus on creatures is because it's more of a creature-oriented deck?
Yeah.
Where the creatures are a little bit more impactful, whereas in Dargo Silas, you're looking at it in terms of, okay, am I enabling for Dargo? Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could see where it depends on the situation. I know, like, for dihada, I always make sure I maintain a certain level of silence effects. So the fact that I'm even considering cutting one, because right now in my dihada list, opposition agent isn't in. So I'm thinking of cutting the Flame Scroll Celebrant, which has Revel in Silence stapled on the back as a silence effect. For the record, nobody ever casts Flame Scroll Celebrant that I've ever seen. It's always for the Revel in Silence in the back.
I've seen it a few times. I've seen the Flame Scroll Celebrant a few times. It's very, very few and far between, but I've seen it.
But I do
weird.
I do feel like that the opposition agent effect is stronger than its silence effect when you consider that I'm considering putting Mornsong Aria in the deck. By the way, it's legendary. That's the other reason why I'm heavily considering it.
Yeah.
It sounds like, given your comments earlier about Archdruid's charm, right?
Yeah.
Can you recall a card that you desperately wanted to run? Like you're just like, this is the card, but you had to cut it for performance reasons. Like it just, even though you wanted to run it, it was not doing what the deck needed it to do.
Honestly, with the decks I play, like I started cedh on Kinnan, and now I'm on Dogthras. So those two very specific decks, they make infinite mana in a multitude of ways. So for me, a card that I really love, and I've always loved, is Walking Ballista. And I cut it because it didn't, outside of infinite mana, it didn't do enough for me to want to keep it in the list. And inside infinite mana, like even in Kinnan, you have Thrasios in the deck and you have Finale. And in Dogthras, you have the same thing. Thrasios in the command zone, Finale in the deck, and like a multitude of other different ways to win that are arguably better.
Yeah.
And honestly, probably not even arguably better. They're just better. They're more compact. So for me, like the card is a walking ballista. I've always loved the card. I've got the Halo Foil Secret Lair. It's still in my binder, and I will always love it. But I don't have a slot for it right now. It just doesn't do enough.
I already said mine. It was Gwen Remorseless. I really wanted to have a second Ballista Citadel effect in Dihada, and I was just like, I can't justify keeping it. So I feel you. Yeah. It sounds like a lot of what drives the changes that you make is more so how you play. But then there's, of course, gold fishing, playing into the different pods online, playing into tournaments, tracking your deck. Do you do anything with tracking of your deck and doing some analytics in that manner?
I do. I just recently, like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, started tracking all my games on Play Nice. It is a very, very nice website to use because it allows you to put in your opening hand and like all the cards in it. So you can get those numbers on like, okay, what did I keep? What helped me? And like you can see how those cards performed from the start of the game, whether you won or not. And it just gives you those raw numbers on your deck. So like my changes are driven by a combination of all three, with like playing the deck kind of at the top. Gold fishing helps with mulligans and seeing like, okay, what cards do I want to keep? What cards should I be looking for? And what's an instant mulligan? What's a snap keep? So I like using the combination of those just to make sure I cover all my bases.
When I do it, I track through a spreadsheet, but I also spent like a week and a half iterating with the forbidden ChatGPT AI and coming up with what I really wanted to track. I felt like having to punch in my full hand every time was a little much. So instead, I wanted to track what were 3 good cards that I saw in the game, and then what was a card that I wish I hadn't seen or wish that I hadn't encountered in the game.
Yeah.
Like I drew something at an ill time, or I thought it would get me to what I was trying to do and realized halfway through, nope, I'm a dummy. I don't know how to read. That card's not going to do what I want it to do. So my tracking has been a lot more tailored to things like that. Yeah. And then it also requires me to put in my win reason or my loss reason. And the loss reason include things like, did I mulligan strong enough? Like kind of forcing me to reevaluate how I mulligan. Or, was it just somebody comboed out faster than I did? Because Dihada is pretty fast, but there are decks that can still go faster, right? Under the right circumstances. So is it just I didn't evaluate the pod correctly, or is it, someone just evaluated the pod better than I did? Right. So it's things like that I track above and beyond just the raw play analytics, because that's what my mind goes to is my evaluation ability. So that's something that I think a lot of players overlook when they're trying to get into cedh, especially if they want to pursue playing in tournaments, is you got to think of more than just your deck's performance. You're the pilot. How are you piloting the deck? How are you arriving at these decisions, and what can you do to improve?
That way of tracking also kind of pulls into account the importance and like not necessarily determining factor, because I've seen wins from any seat, but it pulls into importance the seat order of a pod. Because if you're going first, you can afford to be a little bit more greedy with your mulligans and mulligan more aggressively for a faster hand. But if you're going like say 4th in the seat order, you kind of have to either mulligan for the fastest hand you can have, or be a little bit more responsible and mulligan for more interaction or a card draw engine and things of that kind of sort to be able to slow down those faster decks
Hmm.
and keep yourself in that game.
Yeah, kind of like what we were talking about earlier when I said I don't necessarily want to see Necropotence unless I'm mulling down to like 4, and
Yeah,
I can do a black mana, dark ritual, Necropotence, and then I'm gonna value Necro a couple of turns just to get
yeah,
myself back in.
yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So, is there any special considerations that you make before you go to a tournament or play in an event?
Honestly, right now, I don't have that fully figured out because I haven't played in too many tournaments, and the ones I have played in, like I've done okay, but I've never done. I don't. I've made top 4 and top 16 in like a handful. I can count the times I've made top cut on one hand,
Sure.
which is unfortunate because I do want to level up my game and want to be making those top cuts. But I haven't figured out a specific process for tuning for a tournament or like just an event in general because of the way that I build my decks. Because it's
Okay.
already for the wider meta, I don't know what to do, honestly. Like it's tough when you're already building for that wider meta and you're like, okay, what am I going to see?
Hmm.
What's more likely to come up? I've already kind of answered those questions. Where do I go from here?
Gotcha. Gotcha. Let's kind of pick on a deck that, we have been talking about throughout, but more
Yeah.
specifically, we're going to focus on Yoshimaru Thrasios, also referred to as Dogthras. What is a card that you find, like if you're going through your deck, you pick up your first 7 and you're immediately like, uh, would you say a meal or would you say that there's some other cards that fit that criteria where you're just like, nope, this has got to get mulligan. I gotta immediately
Yeah.
go for something else.
Um, I would like to say a meal, but it depends on the other cards in my hand, and it depends where I'm at in the mulligans. Like if I see a 5 with a meal in it, I'm probably putting it back. But if I see a first or second 7 with a meal in it, and there's like a way to get my cradle out, and there's a way to get the 2 white mana, and like I have like a perfect creature being like Cloud of Fairies in my hand, I can probably like in
Make
good
that
conscience
work.
keep that hand.
Yeah.
A card that I will almost immediately mulligan is Abhorrent Oculus because you never want that in your hand. Especially early game, you won't have the 6 cards in your graveyard to be able to hardcast it. It's a card that you always want to be grabbing from your library straight into play. You never really want that in your hand.
So then the antithesis to that is what's a card that makes you immediately snap keep an opening hand?
There's a few. Like a good mana advantage card, like a Smothering Tithe, or a card draw card, like Rhystic Study or like Training Grounds Biomancer's Familiar, just because of what's in the command zone. Those are like really hard for me to put away. Or having a way to get to the crucial port of the deck being Gaia's Cradle. So like if there's good value and like a crop rotation in my hand, I'll probably just keep that hand. But
Right on. All right, so now lightning round, rapid fire hot takes.
all right,
What is a spicy or unconventional choice that you stand by in deck building?
I will never run Earthcraft. I don't like it, and I feel like it just dilutes your mana base by having you run basics. Like a deck that's really good built around it can be good. I just don't find the value in it.
What is a card that you see in cEDH that you think is overrated right now?
Honestly, it's kind of fallen off, but Mnemonic Betrayal. It relies too heavily on your opponents doing good things without winning the game.
And what is a piece of advice you would give newer players trying to level up their deck building?
Honestly, if you're just trying to level up, if you're just getting into cEDH, play whatever deck you want to play. Don't listen to the people that say, "Oh, that's not a cEDH deck." Anything can be a cEDH deck. There's people that still play super fringe decks and do really well with them. You can put your own flair into a deck. Just make sure you make it the most efficient version of that deck that it can be.
Right on. So, of course, taking us on out, one of the biggest takeaways here is that great deck building isn't about copying a list. It's about understanding why every card is in your deck. And if you got value out of this, hit that button and drop a comment with the hardest cut you've had to make in your own list. I would personally love to read them.
Yeah.
We can discuss your deck list via live stream over on Twitch. And if you want more deep dives into cedh strategy, tuning, and gameplay breakdowns, make sure to subscribe. And I hope you have a wonderful day.